Notts County Talk, you are joining us for our first England preview for the Euros against Croatia on Sunday. A little bit of new dimension to the channel. We're trying to get a bigger reach, aren't we, Tom? Something we're looking forward to doing, changing up the preview a little bit. We're obviously joined by Analyst Bar duo, Colin and Richard. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for turning up in Richard in a Spain shirt.
Sorry about that.
Signed by Raul, I think.
Yeah, allegedly. Yeah, that's what it said on the piece of paper. It is on the back, honestly. But the thing is, it's a number 8, and Raul was famous for wearing either a number 7 or a number 10. So I'm not entirely sure how genuine it really is. But yeah, as I've got a Spanish father, I thought I better do my bit for the fatherland, so to speak.
No, it's a nice shirt. It's a nice shirt. So, sort of, as it's the first preview, it's a little bit more than just previewing the game. We'll have a quick look ahead to the actual tournament. And we'll start with you, Colin. So, do you have a team other than England and maybe a player or two to watch in this tournament?
Yeah, I think one of the teams that shouldn't really be a dark horse, but probably are because of their previous tournaments, is Italy. I think they've had to do an awful lot of hard work behind the scenes, sort of domestically, because they had an aging squad that was not really going anywhere fast. So they've had to do an awful lot in terms of youth development, really trying to improve the Serie A kind of dynamics in terms of making sure that younger players are coming through, and they've been given an awful lot of games to younger and younger players. So they've got quite a young and exciting squad, which you don't normally say in Italy, really, in terms of their tournament football. So they're certainly a side that I'm looking for. But I think when we're looking at individuals, Sweden have got one or two that I'm looking forward to just seeing in the flesh. You know, I've read an awful lot about them, but I've not really had the opportunity to kind of see them. So Kulusevski, I think, is one of those players, and Isak as well. So two young players who I think are very sort of attack-minded. They've got an awful lot of reputation building around Europe and stuff. So I'm looking forward to just seeing them, because that's the beauty of the Euros, isn't it? You know, you read an awful lot about these players, and you may catch highlights here and there, but actually seeing them in the flesh and watching them for 90 minutes gives you an extra dimension, really.
Yeah, I think also the way football has been taken to so many different TV channels and streaming services, you don't get to see half of the players you would. Maybe on Sky Sports you'd have, 4 different leagues across the weekend. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. George, we'll come to you. Who's your team? Who's your players?
My team is the Czech Republic. Bit of a dark horse, possibly. I think they've got a couple of good players that have had some good seasons. Thomas Souček being the obvious one, who's had a really good season, hasn't he, at West Ham? I think he scored 10 from midfield in 38 games. So from midfielder, it's good going. And my player, I think it's probably quite an obvious one to watch, but it's more to the terms that I feel like this possibly could be his last Euros. Cristiano Ronaldo. See how he's going to play it out for Portugal. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think the Portugal squad as a whole as well, how they're going to go about it, because it'd nice to see Ronaldo have a good final tournament if it is his final tournament in the Euros.
I don't know if anyone watched there's like a mini documentary on Ronaldo the other night, and it showed the point, I think it was in the Euros, might have been the World Cup, where he chose to take the penalty against Spain, 5th, and it never even got round to him. It's just incredible. He's such a winner that he was sacrificing that just to take the winning penalty. But Portugal surprised a few years ago, didn't they? Well, so yeah, it's a good choice. Richard, who are you on?
Well, I'm going to have to stick my neck on the block, and although they're not particularly fancy for this tournament, I'm going to go with Spain. Mainly because it's been quite unusual that there's only been a squad of 24 names, so there's a couple of spaces free there. And obviously Busquets has now been tested positive for COVID as well. So that kind of links with my player as well, because I think Rodri Hernandez at Man City, he got left out against Chelsea in the Champions League, and I think he's going to have a bit of a point to prove, and he's going to really replace Busquets, I think, in the middle of the Spanish team there. So that's my ones to watch. Not necessarily who I think is going to do well in it, but certainly ones I'll be keeping an eye on anyway.
Yeah, and they've left Ramos out as well, haven't they?
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
That's huge.
I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with that. No.
No, I think
I can understand why Enrique's done it, and fair play to him. It's a brave decision, and sometimes you have to make the difficult decisions to make progress, don't you? So, yeah,
you do. My side, obviously, I'm not going for them to win it. My side is Turkey. They've got Yilmaz up top. Obviously, won the league with Lille, Liga. 35 years old, 5 assists, 16 goals. He's coming in literally red hot form. They've got Soyuncu at the back from Leicester, obviously good. They've got Demiral, who's at Juventus, pretty good. And they group that they're with your pick there, Colin. They're with Italy, Switzerland in there as well. So it's not an easy group, and Wales, but I could see maybe Italy finishing that group top and Turkey coming through. But I've got some good players. Soyuncu's a very, very good centre back. And I think with the striker coming in form, 35, this definitely his last international tournament. I think they could be one to watch. Also as well, Jude Bellingham for me, 17, coming into the Euros. That's young for any side. Having someone that's possibly knocking on the door to start at 17, and again, we don't see too much of him. Richard, I think you've got some stats on a few of the players we don't see too much of.
Yeah. If my internet speeds up, here we go. So, Jude Bellingham, obviously, is an exciting sort of. Well, he's when you look at his heat map that I've got here, he literally plays anywhere in the midfield. Seems pretty attack-minded. He's got some decent stats. I mean, he's averaging 1.5 shots on goal a game at the moment, both for club and country, and this is in the last sort of 12 months. So, he knows his accurate passing is pretty good as well. He's sort of 84% accurate passing, and his long passes, are higher than that. They're about 51% as an average, over 90 minutes for every game that he's played this year. And he's not afraid to put a foot in, and again, successful dribbles. You're looking at half a dozen dribbles a game with a success rate of about 55%. So, for a young lad, there's a lot to look out for there for sure.
It's good. We'll go into the England squad then. I've sort of the only player we really pushed over there was Bellingham. We've had our say. We put a video up within a couple of hours of the team being announced. So as a whole, Colin, what do you make of the 26?
Sorry, mate, I missed you there. You cut out. Do you want to repeat the question? Sorry, mate.
Yeah, sorry. What do you make of the 26-man squad for England then?
I think there's been an awful lot, hasn't there? There's been a lot of criticism about kind of Southgate, and particularly looking at kind of slightly defensive, which I think is slightly unfair criticism, because I think what Rich was alluding to as well with Bellingham, there's an awful lot of flexibility in that squad. There's an awful lot of players who can play more than one role. And I think in a tournament, if you're going to go quite far to cope with injuries, to cope with what's been a very unusual season as well, you're going to need to rotate. You're going to need to be a little bit more flexible. So I think the criticism of the selection probably isn't that justified in my mind. For me, though, and we'll probably come on to this in terms of the Croatia game particularly, but for me, the tournament's always about that space just in front of the 18-yard box. When I think of some of the players that you watch at the Euros who really dominate that sort of space, you've got your Bergkamps and you've got your kind of Del Pieros and you've got your Tottis and those sort of players who can play and dominate that space. I think one of the things that stood out to me is obviously Jack Grealish, who you would probably expect us all to talk about lovingly, but he's that one player who can really dominate that kind of area just outside the 18-yard box and cause absolute chaos, as I think we saw, with the Romania friendly. So he's definitely someone who stands out to me as being someone who can break apart some of these tight defences that England are going to come up against. I think he's going to be absolutely fundamental to England's success, really.
Is he a must start for you, Grealish? Would you say he's one of the first names on the team sheet?
Has to be.
Yeah,
100%.
I put him and Kane for me as the two that literally have to start. I can't see. He creates so much just from getting fouled. I mean,
and that I think you're right though about Kane as well, because if there's one thing that we need to be a little bit worried about, if Kane gets an injury, where do we go from there? Who have we got who can do what Kane can do in the squad at the moment?
I will offer a counterpoint to that, though. I watched Croatia play. I think they played Belgium, didn't they, in a friendly recently, and they were dominated by Lukaku physically. And I couldn't help but wonder whether Calvert-Lewin would be an opportunity to really kind of break apart that back. But I do agree. I mean, you know, in terms of comparing striker for striker, you go for Kane every single time. I mean, we obviously did a pod together, Rich, didn't we, where we talked about kind of Harry Kane almost as being capable of playing that target man role.
Yeah.
And he can do that. But I just wondered about the kind of the physical dominance that Calvert-Lewin's got, particularly because Croatia seemed to really struggle. They didn't have an answer for Lukaku at all. No. And I just wonder whether that might have played into the reckoning, you know, with the first lineup, really. But obviously, it would be controversial to not play Kane as well.
Yeah,
I think Calvert-Lewin's a good point, though. You know, the amount of sort of thinking of pairings, the amount of free kicks we win with Grealish getting fouled. You know, Calvert-Lewin's proved in the last two friendlies in the air he is fantastic. He nearly scored from sort of the penalty spot with that Ward-Prowse delivery, and that brings me on, George. I know you messaged me when we found out about Ben White's inclusion. Not necessarily that you didn't want that you were against Ben White, but you were a massive advocate for Ward-Prowse, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at the way he can strike a set piece, free kick. I think I recall this season he scored 2 like past 25 yards in one game. To have a player like Grealish who's drawing plenty of fouls and getting plenty of free kicks in dangerous areas, to have sort of Grealish doing that and then Ward-Prowse on the pitch to sort of step up to take those set pieces as well as he can, I feel like that could have been a great asset for England to have, and probably a way out of a lot of tough games. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, I can see why he's took Ben White, because you don't really... It's a big question mark over Maguire. And obviously, with losing a defensive player, would it make sense to exchange him for a midfielder? I mean, I'm not the England boss, but yeah, a little bit disappointed to see him come in, but I can see why he's come in as well.
Richard, Ben White, we were just briefly talking before this. From Brighton, isn't he?
Yeah, and obviously we've got a little bit of a link there with him having played under Graham Potter this season at Brighton, who obviously our own Ian Birchnell understudied for. But yeah, I like Ben White. The little bit that I've seen of him, I do like him. I've got really slow internet here. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up some stats and things here, but. Yeah, you know, he's definitely, again, he's another one who's comfortable with the ball at his feet, which most of them are, you know, in this England squad anyway. But when you look at his total actions in a game, and so when you look at everything that he does and how successful he is, whether that's in his duels, his dribbling, his tackling, his passing, or whatever, you know, he's scoring over 70%. Success rate in everything that he does, so you know that can't be ignored.
One thing as well before we sort of move on, is I'd like to say about Ben White, as I don't really watch lots of Prem games. I do watch probably like 1 or 2 a week. I watched, I think it was Brighton Man City. Yeah, it was Brighton Man City, and he dealt with Foden pretty much all game. And to keep Foden quiet in the form that he's been in this season says a lot about a player, I think.
Yeah, to be fair, he's come under the radar a little bit, and like you say, to keep a player like Foden quiet. Now, let's keep on that point of players keeping other players quiet. Reece James kept Raheem Sterling very quiet in the Champions League final. This is for anyone really, but I know there was this big thing about us taking 4 right backs, and now it's down to 3, and the right back sort of plays as a wing back almost. Who starts in that position? Because you've got 3 players that are very good. You've got one in Trippier that's just gone and won La Liga. You've got Kyle Walker, who's just gone and won the Premier League, and you've got Reece James, who's just gone and won the Champions League. So, who?
For me, when I watch Croatia, I think their biggest threat comes down from wide. They don't seem to have that much in the middle. And so you need someone who's probably got those kind of defensive capabilities as well. So for me, you're probably looking for someone like Walker, who I think can play centre half as well. So he's got that kind of positional sense of being able to, maybe thinking of that kind of defensive step first, or possibly Trippier, just because of, like I say, the experience that he's got against these sort of players particularly. But I think, like I say, it goes back to that need for flexibility as well. I think one of the things that I've noticed about Croatia is that a couple of lads that we'll come on to, they tend to throw them on as subs. So Bracalo, for example, is one of the players that I quite like. He tends to come on as a bit of an impact sub. So we might end up having to change the fullbacks to cope with whatever Croatia throw at us. Obviously, if we go one goal up, for example, and Croatia start to make these quite offensive subs, you're going to have to start thinking about, okay, well, do we need to make a change at fullback to counter that? So, but you're right, it's an absolute dilemma, and it'll be interesting to see how he copes with it.
I personally, I really like Trippier.
I do as well.
So
I like Trippier and Walker. Go on.
Sorry?
Go on, Richard.
So we're going to say something, Richard.
No, I was just talking about, Colin mentioned Bracalo for Croatia, and I was just looking at a few things here, and he certainly likes to hug that sort of left-hand side of the pitch there, and you were right as well about the crosses and how they like to attack, down the flanks, and that's one of the few stats, and I've pulled up all the stats I could to compare Croatia and England. That was one of the standout ones for Croatia, really, that they're actually a lot more threatening than England are generally in a game, down the flanks and with the crosses. And, their success rate isn't particularly brilliant, but they do get a lot of crosses in. So, that we've got to make sure that whoever we've got at fullback on both sides is up for it, for sure.
Yeah, we've seen with Notts, haven't we, Brindley playing in that wide of a back three. That's something I joked about, that Kyle Walker does the same, and we've got our own version of Kyle Walker. I very much like having that extra pace in there. So for me, I would have Walker in that wide central back position, and then I would have I would go for Trippier at wide. But you're saying they've got these crosses and these threats out wide. How do we see Walker dealing with things like that? Because obviously we've also seen it with Brindley at Notts on the back post for a goal a few weeks ago. Do you feel like going into this tournament you need 3 strong central defenders aerially, or do you think we can get away with having a Kyle Walker there?
I think for me, I was going to say, I think it depends on the type of striker you're up against. If you're playing against a Lukaku, for example, you need an absolute unit to be able to cope with that kind of physical presence. I think also it can be as important to almost try and prevent that supply line. I mean, I think the game's going to be won and lost in midfield really against Croatia, because if we can dominate their middle 2 or their middle 3, sometimes they play with that idea of a double pivot, so 2 central midfielders just kind of orchestrating things. If we can suppress that, they're not getting the ball out wide, so that it's not going to be particularly a threat really. So I think it goes back to the flexibility of the squad, that it's good to have your Harry Maguires or your Kyle Walkers as someone who I think can cope with the ball in the air and dominate. But I think you have to. It's almost like a game of chess, isn't it? You have to react also to what they're bringing to us. I don't see Croatia as being an aerial threat, even though the crosses are going to be coming in, I think, left, right, and centre. But I think if we're up against another nation who's got a particularly big target man, there could be question marks asked, I think.
Yeah, I think there's certainly in Nikola Vlasic, he's going to be an aerial threat. He's not quite 6 foot, but he's certainly got a bit of physique about him, and he certainly puts himself about a lot around the 18-yard box. And if he's playing, he could be an issue for us. And it depends as well. I think that the selection may well come down to who's fit enough to play as well at the moment, the way things are.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a big factor. And it might just play into Croatia's hands. They've been dreadful away from Croatia as well this last 12 months or so. They've really struggled to put any decent performances together on the road, so to speak. So hopefully, that will be of a benefit to England as well. But Harry Maguire, if he's not fit, then you've got to start looking at how do you shape that back three, back five, if you like.
For me, if I was to sort of say there's one player that I think has to start, is Grealish. And if I was to look at the flip side, now this is personal preference, I know there's some people that really like him. One player I'm really not a fan of is Tyrone Mings. I'm sure you've probably seen the clip from the Austria game where he just takes the striker out. The ball must be 15 yards away from him. And I do worry about Mings in that defence. I quite like Connor Cody, but at the same time, is he good enough? I think it's very important that we've got Stones and Maguire fit. I don't know, is there any indication of how close Maguire would be to being fit at all?
I've not seen anything. It seems like they're scraping the barrel with news for that, I think.
Yeah,
but I'd agree.
I know Henderson's obviously closer. But I'm going back to what you just looking now, Colin. You said it'd be important to win the midfield battle against Croatia. I'm looking at the last game. They started with Luka Modric, obviously very, very good player. Kovacic, good player. And Brozovic, who I last checked he was at Inter Milan, I think. Yeah, still at Inter Milan. That's a very strong midfield, isn't it?
It is, but I'll tell you someone who I think that they've lost, and my pronunciation of his name might be wrong, but I think it's Rog, who's at Cagliari, who's the much more kind of defensive-minded player. And what they're doing is, particularly against Belgium, is Brozovic ended up going deep, and he looked out of his depth. Like they were forcing him into that kind of anchorman role, if you like, in front of the back four, and he had no positional discipline whatsoever. If you look back at where the Belgian goals, not necessarily where they happen in terms of where the goals are, but where that attacking move started, it was always in front of their 18-yard box. If you notice that crosses were coming into the box, and obviously everyone was trying to deal with that, and the ball would break out to the edge of the 18, and there'd be two players for Belgium waiting there with no marker whatsoever. So I think that could really play into England's hands, and like I say, Grealish sort of dominating that space outside the 18-yard box, because again, him sort of like dropping off and picking up bits and pieces, and then, as we've seen previously, weaving into the box, I think would be ideal. I think also, I think it all links together what we were talking about the way Croatia are attacking. They're having to use the wings, I think, because Modric, who is a fantastic player, but just has not got the engine to be getting up and down the pitch and being as effective in the attacking third that he used to. So
yeah, it's
really his range of passing that he's spraying it about everywhere, and just hoping that they get their chances down the flanks, really. So I do think if we can suppress that experienced midfield, dominate it, probably, dominate it in terms of not just with the ball, but with energy as well, it should, fingers crossed, it should result in some England success.
So Richard and Colin, we'll pull our team up in a minute, but who how many do you start in the centre of the park for England then? Richard,
it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. We're going to have to assume that, that Southgate's going to stick with his 3-5-2, 4-2-3-1. Sorry, I'm thinking of something else. So I think he needs to go with the 4-2-3-1, because that gives him what he needs in the middle there. Everything that Colin's just said, he needs that, and it still provides us with that attacking threat as well. I mean, when, again, just looking at a few more of the stats where Croatia and one really sort of popped out to me, you can see the kind of team that we're going to be up against, because if they're nothing else, they're sort of tenacious, and certainly in the midfield area as well, and they're one of the highest ranking teams in the tournament, actually, for successful sliding tackles.
Grealish should have a field there, wouldn't he?
I was just thinking that, poor old Grealish. But yeah, it is difficult. But I think, if it goes with that 4-2-3-1, you've got to have Grealish in there. We need it's just who just sits behind just sits behind Grealish in that too. You know, I'd have him almost in that number 10 role as well.
Yeah.
I do wonder whether this is a Henderson game, you know, just because he's up against the midfield with not much energy in the tank himself. So therefore his lack of legs that you would expect with the amount of games that he's missed. I don't think it will be as obvious as if you're playing someone who's high pressing all the time. And like I say, you're up and down box to box. So I think he might be a good selection to have in that too, because he can spray the ball out. You know, if we are attacking, he can get those kind of short and long passes together, I think. So, you know, I might have a question mark if we were playing anybody else, but I think because of the comparative age to players like Modric, for example, I think his lack of games might not be an issue in that particular one.
Do you think as well Henderson will be a good choice, especially if we're starting with, say, a Grealish and trying to start with a Grealish and Mount, for example. Then needing somebody like Henderson in there as well, you know, just as a bit more, let's say, a level head, but, you know, a little bit more experience, especially, you know, having played in world tournaments before. So
yes, Henderson in that too, and then possibly I probably wouldn't go Bellingham, but I'd probably go someone like Rice, just who I think Henderson can be talking to him an awful lot, you know, getting him through the game that way. But Rice has got those legs, you know. If the pace does pick up, for example, you know, I think having that nice balance as a two, and then in front of them you've got the likes of Grealish to receive the ball, you know, you've got your Mounts, etc. Maybe your Sanchos, you know, those sort of players who are sort of pacey, you know, energetic and stuff, and are gonna suppress Croatia as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of Bellingham. I agree. Not necessarily for this game, I don't think. Not to start, but it'll be interesting. Before I ask you sort of about Croatia, George, one player that I do want to highlight, and I've been looking out for a little while, he's usually on the bench for Croatia, but it's Orsic. He's at Zagreb, I think. You know, he's scoring double figures every single season that he's been at Zagreb. He's not really been in European football much. He's been out in Asia, South Korea, China. But having watched videos of him, he's very quick. He's very good. Like you said, they like to play down the wing. He's dangerous. He's a dangerous player. So I just want us to be careful of him as well coming off the bench. I mean, he's only played a handful of minutes because they've got Perisic ahead of him. Very hard to break into the team, but for me, he's someone I've got to watch. George, anything stand out with Croatia or concern you or go in your fate? You know, make you think actually this is one for England to win?
I think they are going to be quite a tough side to beat. I feel like we've always sort of struggled against Croatia, England, haven't we?
I agree.
So I just feel like they're a bit of a banana skin for us, aren't they? That's one thing that does concern us. I think as Notts fans, we've seemed to have put to bed the not playing very well on TV. So let's hope we can put the Croatia not playing very well against Croatia to bed as well. But it entirely depends on how Southgate sets up for me. I don't think they have any real threats against England squad, because when I look at the squad, we've got such depth and different ways we can apply players to the game and change formation, and players playing in different positions and stuff like that. Like, we've got so many different dynamics of the squad. We should really be able to beat most teams, I feel like. But I don't know. I'm a bit hesitant for this game. I don't know why.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, George, do you think, though, that that's some of the problem that Southgate's got, what you've just mentioned, about there's so many different dynamics in the squad there, and there's so many options, because we're probably, we're a few days away from the first game of the tournament, and he's probably not even entirely sure himself what his best 11 is.
No, I totally agree with you. Yeah, 100%. It must be difficult. I mean, he was facing a lot of criticism, wasn't he, for taking four right backs to start with. Obviously, Alexander-Arnold's dropped out now because of injury. But you're looking at those players, and a few of them could play a bit further up. Obviously, Trent and James could play central midfield. It is difficult, isn't it? I mean, me and Tom obviously picked our squad, and we find it quite difficult, didn't we, to put an 11 together that we sort of agreed on throughout. So it's not easy. It's really not easy, because it's it's not like we've got a bad side. We've got a lot of good players. That's why it's difficult.
Yeah, something I want to touch on, and I'm not saying this is my opinion on it, but I've seen a lot on social media saying that they feel the problem with Southgate is that he doesn't allow players to express themselves. Do you think that's a fair assessment of Southgate?
Yeah. All I will say on that is I like Southgate, and I've always liked Southgate, but I like him in the same way that I like Neil Ardley. If we look at that,
I was thinking the same.
Gareth Southgate to England is what Neil Ardley was to Notts, and the different dynamic that Ian Birchnell's brought into Notts, for example, is the first thing he said is, I want us to be on the front foot, and I want those players to be brave. I want them to be brave. I don't want them to think they can't try things, they can't do what they know they can do, and I just worry that Southgate isn't going to let them be brave in that way, and let them really, like you say, express themselves, because I don't think that's in his makeup, I think tactically, I think he's very, very good. I think he's a really good coach. He's obviously a very nice bloke and everything else as well. But I would say he is England's Neil Ardley, and I don't mean that in a bad way, other than the fact that I think we're just lacking that forward-thinking bravery from a manager.
Graham Potter for England, then.
Absolutely.
Ian Birchall for England.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, he needs to get us up first. I do think, sort of a cliche, but I don't feel like, say we're losing with 20 minutes to go. I want to see a manager that's gonna, take the shackles off and just say, right, Foden, Grealish, off you go and hurt them, and just be a bit more fluid. That's what I want to see, and I do worry that, yes, Grealish has been very good in the friendlies, but he's and they're only friendlies, but he's not touched really on what he did for Aston Villa. Foden, not quite really there. I think set the side up behind them very strong, set them up very disciplined, and just let the attackers go, because I've looked through most of the squads, and for me, probably attacking wise, there's only France with a better squad. I mean, theirs is ridiculous. Mbappe, Griezmann, Benzema, Thuram, it's fantastic. But I don't see a squad with more unpredictability and flair, I'll say, up front than England.
Yeah,
we need to just go at it, I think.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I do really like our attacking options. So we'll pull our team up. It's sort of based on what was shown at the end of the Romania game with their formation. So we've just sort of stuck to that. They were sort of saying a 3-4-3, could be a 5-2-3, sort of 5-2-2-1. We reckon Pickford in goal. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah, and then we've gone Walker, Stones, and I think Mings will play. I don't see him playing Mings for both friendlies and not.
The whole Harry Maguire situation again, isn't it, as well? So
and I think he prefers Mings over Cody. I think, definitely. We've gone Trippier on the right, and we've gone Mount and Rice in the centre. I worry that might be a little bit light. Like you said, Colin, there might need to be someone else, and like you said, Richard, the Grealish playing further forward and then two behind him. What are your thoughts on Calvin Phillips, Colin?
Yeah, I like him. I mean, he's one of those players as well that I think he's a bit of a street footballer, isn't he? In the sense that he gets in, he doesn't mind roughing it and those sort of things. I think there was some fantastic stuff that the BBC did where he went back to where he was from and everything, and he talked about kind of 15-a-side games and getting kicks from older lads and stuff. And I think Croatia are going to be pests. They are going to be difficult in that midfield, so you are going to need someone resistant to those sort of tackles and stuff. And I think he could be a good choice to have in that centre of midfield in terms of doing the grafting and the grappling. And then possibly, say you wear him down for 45 minutes, you take him off and you bring somebody else on who can exploit the little bit of the fatigue or whatever that's created with a 45-minute battle. So again, great option possibly.
Yeah, Mason Mount as well, George. Love him, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can really not include him. Obviously, the way he's been playing this season, he's put a lot of his doubters to sleep, hasn't he, really? He had a lot of doubt around him, I feel like, this season. And he's just gone and won the Champions League. So fair play to him. And what a player he's turned out to be this season. He's just been every game he's got better and better, in my opinion.
Yeah. We're going Shaw on the left. I really like Chilwell, but Shaw's had a very, very good season as well, and it's pretty solid. And then this is where we debated for a while, didn't we? I think Kane's got to start up there, but we've gone for 2 players either side, and I think it would be Rashford and Sterling because of what we've talked about, Richard, with Southgate and just his manner and how he is. I don't think Sterling's had a very good season at all. And I'm not sure Rashford's been playing. I think I saw a stats like every 4.8 days on average for the whole season. But he's been carrying a knock. But he's not had the best season. But I would fully expect to see those two play. I really would. Now this is what we think might happen. But we wouldn't go Rashford or Sterling, would we, George?
Absolutely not. I think when you look at what we've been saying throughout this video, Grealish, for me, has to start. Foden as well. I mean, he's been fantastic this season. I don't know if anyone saw today as well. It's not very football related, but he's done his hair like Gaza.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Who's going to be the first one to mess that up for him? Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully nobody. So players I like just a bit of unpredictability, because I feel like obviously teams are going to do their homework on players. That's bound to be, but Rashford and Sterling seem to be quite obvious choices, I think, because of who they play for. But you look at Grealish, plays for Aston Villa, who have done quite well this season. But I don't think teams are going to be as prepared to play a Jack Grealish as they would be a Sterling or a Rashford. So, yeah, I just feel like bring a couple of the young players in further up, like we've said, with flair as well, like Foden. And, yeah, it's going to be... George, I feel like it's so difficult to call, isn't it?
But if we were to play that, and if we were to play 2 men off Kane, who would your 2 be?
Foden and Grealish. And yeah, I'd pay Grealish a winger.
Richard, if we were to play that, who would you play off Kane if we were to have 2 players off him?
Yeah, I'd certainly have Jack Grealish playing off him there. And it's a difficult one for the other choice, because I actually like both Rashford and Sterling, but I'd probably go with Sterling actually.
Something to prove.
Yeah,
Colin?
Absolutely.
Who would you go?
Yeah, I've got to play Grealish somewhere. Just because, like I say, I think he's going to, certainly from what I saw, Croatia struggle with Belgium. That space of just dropping a bit deep and having the ball and stuff in that area outside the penalty box. I love that. I worry about Rashford just because, kind of with the fact you were talking about how many games he's done and the aggressiveness of Croatia, really, that seems a bit of a recipe for disaster with an injury very early on. So I might really want to protect Rashford, really. So I might go kind of Sterling and Grealish just because of that kind of unpredictability off a central striker and picking up those balls a little bit deeper. So that's probably what I'd go with. Yeah,
I have full hearts for Grealish. I'd go Grealish, but I'd also go Sancho as well. I really like Sancho. I think it'd complement Grealish well on the other side. Like you say, Grealish can, drift in. He just you don't know where he's going to be. And then Sancho, he can go inside, as we saw in a few friendlies. He can go outside. He's sort of in the Sterling and Rashford bracket where he's not been his top level, but I would have him in. And then to have Foden off the bench, or to have anyone we've not chosen off the bench, we're forgetting Calvert-Lewin here, would be pretty good. So I'm expecting something similar to that, unless we go with that 4-2-3-1 you mentioned, Richard. I think. Let's wrap up then with our predictions. George, I'll put yours up on the screen. You have gone for...
No. I'm not... I've pretty much said this already. I'm not overly confident going into this that we are going to come out this game with a victory, as my predictions suggest. I think it's going to be a tight game. Like we said, Croatia are a physical side. I think we'll go 1-0 up, but then I feel like Croatia will score late on in that game.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to go England 1, Croatia 1 with Kane. And I promise we haven't discussed this beforehand. I think England will go 1-0 behind, and just to make it different, and then Kane will score. But I think it'll be a test, and I think it's important not to lose this game. I think not an easy group, not an easy side to play, but I think we'll be the better team in the game. But I think it'll end 1-1. But I think we'll be all right in the group. Richard or Colin, who wants to go first? Your prediction?
Well, we're not going to lose it, but if we win, it's only going to be by a single goal. And I had actually written down England 1, Croatia 1 before we started, because I fully agree with both of you, and especially what George was saying as well earlier, that Croatia's always been a bit of a funny team for England. We've always struggled against them, and I don't know. I'm just not convinced. I think it's a tournament that we're going to have to grow into, because I think there are so many things regarding the squad and how we start and who we play and everything, that they're still up in the air. That I think we're going to need a couple of games to start really understanding what we're up against. But yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm going for a 1-1.
Who's the score for England?
I'm going to say Sterling.
Sterling, yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit different from us, but still, so that 1-1.
Yeah.
Colin?
Well, I wasn't expecting to be a man with a Wales flag in my garage, to be probably the most positive of the four of us. I think Croatia are a team in transition. I don't quite think they're the Croatia of old. I think they have got a generation of players coming through, some young lads who I think if we're talking another 2 or 4 years' time, we're going to be going back to a dangerous Croatia side. I'm going to go 2-0 England. And I think, although I'm going to struggle naming the actual goal scorers, I think there'll be one with a header in the box or some, a real kind of scramble in the box. And I think there'll be one from the edge of the area, because I think they're the two areas that Croatia look really, really wobbly with against Belgium. So I'm hoping England were watching that too and they exploit it somehow.
Yeah. Well, at least none of us have predicted a loss. I think overall, I'm feeling very positive about the tournament. I think I actually agree that we will grow into this. I think tricky group, but I think we will grow into it. And I like that we've got your pick, George, Czech Republic, at the end of the group stage. I think they might be. I think they'll be the, let's say, least tricky team to face. I think. Colin and Richard, thank you very much for joining us. It's been really interesting, having all your stats and analysis, and it's given us a different dimension to looking at the game. So that's been really helpful. And we'll leave your channel in the description below. So if you enjoyed what Richard and Colin have had to offer, then be sure to go and give them a subscription.
That's great.
Cheers, guys. And thank you, as always, for joining us. We will have our Notts Torquay preview. It's a big one on Thursday, so stick around for that. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.